Alright guys, today we're doing a little bit of a different video, but still sticking with gun content, and that is, today we're going to be talking about a bite-sized gun and is 22 viable for self-defense, and when I would actually use 22 for self-defense. Now this guy right here will kind of go over, I guess, like I said, kind of the breakdown of 22 for self-defense and why I chose this gun for that kind of role. So kind of spoiler alert, I would indeed choose 22 for self-defense, but like I said, we're going to break this down because I think there's been some semi-recent advancements in 22 like ammo technology, and with the right loadings I do think that this is actually fairly viable with the right firearm. So first off, let's break into the firearm of choice. Now I think the core of any self-defense situation and kind of thought process is what firearm should you choose? And for me, I would say that not all 22 is made equal in this case. And so I don't think that necessarily 22 for self-defense is just a universal, like, oh yeah, just go get yourself one. I would recommend, if you are really wanting to delve into truly something like an actual pocket pistol and something that's a 22, I would highly recommend something like this now unfortunately discontinued Beretta Bobcat, or sorry, yeah, this is Beretta Bobcat. This is the 21A, and of course chambered in 22 LR. Now the reason why I showed or recommended this firearm specifically is for a few reasons. The first one for me is that, like the Tomcat, like the Bobcat, these are kind of specific traits to these Beretta firearms specifically. It does have the ability for you to pop the barrel up like you see here. So what makes this very handy for a self-defense, like a genuine real self-defense situation, is not so much in the actual situation, but the usability of this, being able to load it, being able to rack the slide on this guy, it just really helps with actual usability, because true pocket pistols are not very easy or typically very user friendly. So the 21A does tend to be pretty user friendly. And for those who don't know, the barrel pops open like this so you can load around in there. You would load your magazine in here, and with that, as you guys see, remove the round, that would allow you to fire the gun, and then it would just start cycling. So that's the first part for me that I really like. I do like that this pops open so you can load it. In addition though, something, and I might roll in a video, I did an actual short on this guy shooting it, and I chose to leave it in even though it was, my first shot was a dud, and that is unfortunately with some lesser quality 22 ammo, you do get light primer strikes, or just primer strikes that just don't fire off. But I did show in the video that what is nice about the 21A specifically is that it is double action, single action. So if you need to, or if you do have a light primer strike and the gun doesn't go bang, you can just pull the trigger back and it will fire it, or will restrike it with the hammer. So that is something that a lot of, once again, a lot of semi-auto handguns in general are not double action, single action. So I do really like the fact that this is double action, single action, so that you can pull through, and if the round doesn't go bang, you can just keep pulling the trigger, and hopefully it does go bang. Now, this being said, no 22 is perfect. So when it comes down to it, you know, ultimately 22 for self-defense isn't always a 100% guarantee, but the double action component of the 21A does give it an added reliability factor, in the fact that if you do pull the trigger, it doesn't go bang, you can pull the trigger again, and hopefully it will go bang that time. So this is the core firearm for me for this kind of self-defense kind of outlook. So that's the firearm. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I do think the other thing that makes 22 LR more of a viable a more viable self-defense round is the addition of quality ammo. Now, not all 22 ammo is made the same, and I think that this is, broadly speaking, like most calibers, but we have seen in recent years the introduction of true self-defense specific ammo. So here on you guys' left over here is the CCI Stinger, and then on the right is the Federal Punch. And I do think Federal Punch is the superior ammo of the both of them, and I'll break that down in just a little bit. But the ammo here, things like Punch, Federal Punch, is a more reliable, more expensive, but more kind of meticulously built round with a lot more intention. And I think something like this Federal Punch round really solves most of the reliability problems with 22. And what do I mean by that? I mean that oftentimes 22 is very cheaply made. Obviously, it's a very cheap round, and so it's not really given much attention. But the CCI Punch, or sorry, but Federal Punch is a lot better than that. Of course, you are dealing with a nickel-plated case, but in addition to that, you also have a round nose projectile that is actually coated. I believe it says some kind of lubrication on it. I'm not exactly sure what kind of lubrication. There's definitely some kind of lubrication on these actual projectiles to once again help them to cycle better. Now, once again, not necessarily saying that that will mean that this is just an absolute 100% reliable, platform, but I do think that those advantages do give it the leg up over even something like CCI Stinger that also is nickel plated, or at least the case is nickel plated. So, both of these are really good, but I will say Federal Punch definitely takes the lead. In addition to this, too, Federal Punch is also a better performing bullet, and that's predominantly because it is a solid piece of projectile, and so this is definitely going to retain its weight, it's going to penetrate better, and it's going to perform better. Now, once again, do keep in mind when I say that it's going to perform better, it's not going to perform along the lines of 32 ACP, 9 mil, 45. It's not going to produce, or it's not going to produce the same level of energy, same kind of permanent wound cavity. This is still 22 LR, so this is still small, it's still not necessarily, not going to do the job, but it's not going to be like the end all to beat all bullet. We're not talking about some large caliber here. And certainly when it comes down to these, you're going to be wanting to understand that these are going to be predominantly, you versus an aggressor, not necessarily like a bear or a moose, but something like a human or smaller. So that is the reality to 22. But I do think that both of these rounds in particular, as my camera struggles to focus, both of these rounds are very good for self-defense. They're very proven performers in general, reliability. And once again, you pay the price for it. These are both not cheap ammunitions, but they do work very well. Now, like I said, if I had to choose one, once again, I think Federal Punch is going to be the better one. It is advertised as a personal defense round. Holding this up right, yep. So this is advertised as a personal defense round. And I will say, this one, as it does say on the box, it is advertised as getting 1,070 feet per second out of a 2-inch barrel, which is pretty impressive because this is about a 2-inch barrel. So getting that level of performance out of something this small is very impressive. But yeah, so that is ultimately what I think of it from a personal defense standpoint. Now, another standpoint that I do think a lot of people overlook a role or a use for something like this is as a kind of last-ditch survival handgun. And once again, this is going to be definitely more survival. And I have heard some people say that they got this as that kind of handgun and then ended up disliking it because it wasn't that accurate. And to be fair, this gun is not super accurate. These guns are not known for their supreme accuracy. And to be fair, when you have a barrel that hinges up like this, there's not much play, but there's a tiny bit of left and right wiggle. So of course, this thing is going to have point of impact shifts naturally. But I will say something like this, in my opinion, would still be a viable survival handgun as a last-ditch survival handgun, predominantly because even though some people may say, it's not accurate, it's not X, Y, or Z, and the sights are kind of crude, and all of that stuff is true. Like I said, it's not the most accurate, and not, the sights are pretty crude, but I will say that by and large, if you find yourself in a survival situation, it's better to have something than absolutely nothing. And in addition to this too, I will say from my own personal experience that things like grouse, things like hare, things like squirrels are oftentimes animals that even if you take a shot at and you miss, they're not necessarily, they're like kind of so dumb that they don't run away immediately or fly away per se. Some will, but a lot of them won't, and a lot of them you can also get very close to. So once again, not saying that this is the end all to beat all, but if you need to hit something at 15, 10 feet, this is a lot better than having nothing, because this can still hit a grouse sized target at 10 feet. And once again, it may not necessarily, take the hair off of, this may not take the hair off of like a squirrel's neck at 50 feet, but also if you need something for 5, 10, 15 feet, you just need to put around roughly on the target, this can actually be a viable solution. One thing that I'm personally going to do with my 21A, and something that I would recommend if you do take and carry one of these, whether that's for self-defense or for survival, is I would highly recommend painting this front sight here with like a orange nail polish. That's what I'm going to do personally, is I'm going to put some orange nail polish on this front blade just to help it stand out, because unless you have like a high contrast, like say a white background or something, it is very hard to line up the sights with this gun just because it is crude. But that is another thing that I think is very useful of these, especially because once again, as a backup survival handgun, this is something that you can literally throw in a pocket, a cargo pocket, and just have it on you. And if you for whatever reason, need to take a shot on a grouse or something like that, this thing works well enough. Once again, it's not going to be some like match handgun. And if you're really like dedicated hunting application, definitely go with something like a 2245 from Ruger. That'd be a much better alternative. But if you're talking about something like as a survival kit gun, and you're making a compact survival kit, this is like something that would be good for an emergency, just in case. Because I'm here to tell you, like from my own personal experience being out in the wild hunting and doing things, a lot of animals such as grouse, hare, and squirrel, like your predominant small game, do actually let you get pretty close to them. Once again, I've been within 10 feet of each of those animals, and if you have something like this inside 10 feet, the chance of you being able to hit it is pretty high, especially because this is semi-auto. So even if your first shot misses, the fact is you can pull the trigger. First shot misses, you can just pull the trigger again. This is a semi-auto. It's pretty quick, and so I would definitely recommend practice with it, get used to it. It may not hit exactly where you want it to, but get used to taking follow-up shots with it. And so that's probably what I would do, in my opinion, is first shot miss, boom, try shoot again. This thing is semi-auto, it reloads itself pretty darn quick, and so you can get pretty fast follow-up shots. And the other nice thing about the 21A is that because it's predominantly steel construction, it is a little bit heavier, and by heavy it's not really that heavy, but it's heavy enough so that 22 LR really doesn't feel like anything. Like I've sat there, and you guys can see in the video that I'm showing, or the videos that I'm showing, that like realistically the recoil on this thing is non-existent. So follow-up shots are totally realistic with this thing. So the 21A is a pretty decent overall kind of gun. Once again, it does have its faults, but I would say with modern specific self-defense 22, I would definitely carry this without any real fears. And once again, with the fact that this is a double action, single action, if you do fire, hit a dud, pull the trigger again, and most of the time it will resolve itself. If you keep pulling the trigger, it'll probably go bang. And so that is another advantage of this handgun. So anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video on the little Beretta 21A Bobcat. This thing is pretty cool. I will say, if you're looking at one of these guys, I would say the Tomcat and 32 ACP is my preferred one, but until I can track one of those down and purchase it, I am stuck with the 21A. But once again, the 21A has actually really grown on me. I kind of got it first kind of with some apprehensions. I was like, I'll get it, I'll give it a shot, because it was pretty darn cheap, and most of these guns are pretty darn cheap. So it was a pretty low like commitment monetarily. So I was like, okay, I'll get it. Worst case scenario, I don't like it and I just sell it. But it has grown on me, and like I said, with some time, with the right ammo, and with the right setup, this thing is actually pretty darn cool, and you can put in some good work with this thing. Like I said, it's not going to be like the most accurate. This isn't like a match 22. It's not crazy, but does a good job and it does some things right. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, guys. Hopefully you learned something in this video. Maybe this video sparks your interest in picking up a 21A. These things are cool. Unfortunately, I will say these things are also discontinued nowadays from Beretta. They did make them, like they brought them back during COVID or right around that time frame. They made some really cool like FTE ones with threaded barrels and stuff like that. And I also feel like the ones with threaded barrels would also be pretty cool for like survival, because then you got a suppressed, and if you could run this suppressed, definitely like no animal would know you're shooting at them. And yeah, but I will say, even as it stands, like I've said, it's not going to be the best hunting firearm, but truly, like, there's a lot of animals out there, like I keep going back to grouse, but I really do mean it, like grouse are the type of animal that they're the type of animal that you can get pretty darn close to. Like, you can get within 5 feet of a lot of grouse, especially like spruce grouse. And so long as you don't like lunge at them, so long as you don't get any closer or make any sudden movements, you know, you just slip this out of your pocket, point it at them and shoot, like you can get really close to spruce grouse. And the thing is, it's like you can get close, that you can't get close enough to touch them, but you can get close enough to shoot them with something like this. And so I think it's one of those things where I heard some people in the forums, they're like, you know, I bought this with the intention of being a, you know, backup handgun for hunting. And once again, I wouldn't recommend this as a backup hunting handgun, but if you're building out something like a little truck survival kit or an in case of emergency kit that you just want some firearm in, this is a pretty good choice, because there's a lot of wild animals that will let you get close enough. Even things like, once again, if you're in a true survival situation, things like ducks a lot of times will let you get pretty darn close, especially if they're in the water and you're on land, because a lot of ducks feel that, you know, if you're there in water and you're not in the water, you can't really hurt them. So I've also gotten pretty darn close to ducks, and once again, if you have to, something like this, you can get pretty close, pop it, kill it, eat it, you know, do what you got to do. And so once again, in a true survival situation, there's a lot of smaller game animals that you can get close to that you can pretty easily take with something like this, especially if you have something like a stinger. The punch probably would not be an optimal hunting round, but the stinger is a pretty good option because it is of course a high velocity hollow point, so it'll do some pretty good damage to the vitals of an animal. So anyways, guys, this has been nearly 20 minutes rambling about a 21A, but it's good. Try it out if you want to. If not, hopefully you learned something. As always, guys, God bless, and I'm out.